No trailer it is then tonight. Welcome back to another edition of the podcast, and today is our Gameweek 3 National League preview show, previewing all the upcoming fixtures for Gameweek 3. We're also going to discuss the latest news surrounding the National League and potentially as well dive into reacting to a few of yesterday's fixtures. That's a great start. My trailer wasn't working, so we couldn't even get that and make the podcast look a bit more professional. But we can be as professional as we like when we've got Paul Franklin with us, who always makes it more professional. Paul, how are you doing?
Hello, mate. All right, yeah, you got back safely from last night then, from the Wealdstone match?
Yeah, 100%. Got back nice and safe. Of course, for those who don't know, Wealdstone versus Halifax, I travelled down. Paul's a Wealdstone fan. We both co-commentated. I think I did a little bit better than I did last time, to be fair. I don't know what your thoughts were.
No, it was good. It was an entertaining enough game. There was enough happened early doors, didn't they, with the missed Halifax. And then Wealdstone went 1-0 ahead after 18 minutes. And it was hard to Stones to break down a little bit. You know, Halifax didn't come out and offer too much, which was quite right. And they managed to nick that goal just before half time. But second half, I felt Wealdstone were just patient and comfortable. And you know, I think we've seen one of the goals of the season there, Luke, with Jack Cook's right foot screamer into that top corner. It was we were talking about a player that had just been signed permanently for Halifax, and it come out of the blue that Jack had just let rip with this goal straight into the top bin. So, yeah, it was a good game, a comfortable win, I think, in the end for Wealdstone. And Halifax, I think, have got a lot to work on, haven't they, in terms of just getting that team right. And let's hope that they can. Just be a bit better, I guess.
There were a few positive signs, I suppose, for me as a Halifax fan that you can take. I think the big reason the game went how it was down to the red card. I thought up until that point, I thought Halifax were actually the better team. Of course, they had a penalty that they missed, and then the red card happened, which was quite controversial, I thought, overall. Particularly now that I've watched it back. I know you, Paul, even as a Wealdstone fan, felt it was a little harsh. Of course, it was a foul and potentially a yellow card, but I think a full-on red card for me was very harsh. And I do think, in a way, it wrecked the game because I think up until that point, it was quite an entertaining one. And I think that just probably gave Wealdstone a bit of added motivation to be able to go on and take the lead. Of course, Halifax came back through Kawara. And then the second half, I actually thought Halifax started the better side, but that second goal, as you've mentioned there, I think it just stunned everyone in the ground, particularly a centre-half scoring a goal in that fashion. We were in prime position to be able to view that effort. And I think even as an away supporter from myself, you kind of had to admire the strike.
Yeah, it was a good goal. And it's, like you said in the interview, you could hit 99 of them and 100 of them rather than 99 won't go in. It was just an absolute perler. So it was fitting to win any game. You know, Stones have now gone and won two in two, and they go to Woking on the road on Tuesday. So that will be an interesting one. First away game this season for them, and hopefully they'll go there with a bit of confidence.
100%. We're speaking about spectacular goals. There's an opportunity that Cook strike could actually only be the third best goal in the division. And I know you mentioned it could have been a goal of the season contender for Wealdstone. Yet in that game week, there's two other goals for me that I think one of them definitely, in my opinion, is probably seen as better. And there's another one as well. I think if you look at the Rochdale Altrincham game, I'm not sure if you've seen the goal or not, but Alarakia, I believe, with the actual equaliser himself, had a great effort from outside of the box that went in. A little bit central, but I still think it was very hard, very awkward for the keeper to be able to save that. I would really suggest anyone who's not seen it going and checking out that goal. And as well, I'm sure you must have seen this, Paul, Regan Linney's strike for Carlisle United versus Boreham Wood.
I have, yeah. It's I did see what you tweeted earlier, Luke. I think the only thing that's slightly disappointing from Regan Linney's point of view is he got that deflection on the way in off the defender's head. So I'm not sure. I'm not having that. I think Jack Cook's was a better goal, to be fair.
Really?
Yeah.
Not the actual move to it and everything, though. Like, I didn't actually notice there was a deflection, and I tried zooming in, and I still couldn't really tell if there was a deflection or not. But everyone's suggesting that there was one, so I'll take everyone by it that there was one. But the nutmeg's actually to the build-up to that. I don't know if you saw it, but then to strike it like he did, for me, I don't know. I just think it was a touch of class.
No, granted, it was a very decent goal.
Yeah, I think it's
that, and Alarakia's goal as well was they were a good sort of I suppose a good example of what National League can produce. I think, Luke, I watched Arsenal play Man United this afternoon. That was an absolutely dreadful football match, and I said to my wife, I think I'll take the National League over that any day of the week. After watching that, I thought it was absolutely abysmal. But top players playing like they did today at Old Trafford was disappointing when you can have a game like we had at Halifax and you see some of the goals that are scored. So, although I do like football and I do watch Premier League, I'd certainly would take the National League over that this afternoon.
Yeah, just a question for everyone in the live chat as well. We are going to be heading to the live chat very shortly. Nearly 50 people watching, and we're only 6 minutes in, which is great numbers, particularly for a Sunday night. For those who've seen all three of the goals, the Alarakia goal, the Regan Linney goal, and the Cook goal, as well, if you haven't, quickly, while you're watching this, look on your phones at each of the goals and put them in order for us. And because I actually want to see what people actually think of each goal, because I think with every goal, there's pros and cons to, for example, the Regan Linney, for me, I think you look at the actual move to it, him nutmegs in the player, the way it was so far in the corner, yet the con to it is, of course, the deflection. Alarakia's goal, a great strike on it, didn't take a deflection or anything, but potentially could be seen as a little bit central, although it was quite far out. And, Cook's goal was just magnificent. But the only thing I will say to that, at first I was like, no keeper in the world would have saved that. When you look at Johnson's positioning, potentially, if he was in a better position, he would have been able to save that. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Well, Johnson didn't have a great afternoon, did he, Luke?
No.
So I'm not surprised he didn't save it. Yeah, I think there was, conversation in the bar afterwards that Wealdstone at one or two said he maybe could or should have saved it. I don't know. The problem is you're getting caught out, aren't you? It's out of his feet and unleashed before I suppose he can really set himself, to be honest. And no one was expecting him to hit it from there. Not only the distance from where he was, but the position he was on the pitch. He was almost going to look like he was going to set himself to either play wide or whip the ball in for a cross, and then to actually get out of his feet and have a go like he did. I think it would catch any goalie, and it would have taken a good save for it to not go in, to be fair. So, but no, listen, it's we all have our opinions on what is a good goal. I'm not suggesting Regan Linney's wasn't a good goal. The individual skill, nutmeg, coming inside, being able to bend it in the top corner was very, very good. But you kind of expect that from Regan Linney. I don't think you'd expect anything like we saw from Jack Cook on a regular basis.
No, I think he as well, particularly for those who watched the match afterwards, seemed to give him a bit of spark that all of a sudden he was an attacking player. He was like playing on the right wing, wasn't he, for a good 15, 20 minutes at times. But no, for Wealdstone yesterday, definitely, in my opinion, I think deserved to win. I think there were probably times where Halifax were on top, even with 10 men, and I don't think it was a dreadful performance from us. It's still a new team, and I think going down to 10 men was a huge factor. But I think at the end of the day, you look at that game, the difference was that second goal by Cook. That was the touching class that I think was the difference between both sides on the day. We're going to speak a bit about other games as well yesterday that we've kept our eyes on as well. But before we do that, we are going to come to the live chat, and it may link into certain games that we're going to speak about. First person in tonight, we've got Tech God. He said, might be a tricky game. Be on TV, Sky Sports, TNT Sports, BBC Sport, or even ITV Sports. Yeah, to be fair, it will be on DAZN, the York Southend game, which he's referring to. And of course, that is the main headline or title for tonight's podcast that we're going to be speaking about in a little bit detail later, as well as previewing all the other fixtures. But I think that is the mouth-watering clash at this stage of the season. Southend, hopefully, with another very good game against York. Whoever wins this, I could see going on to win the league. Oh, you can't say that at this stage, though. This is something I disagree with. Like, third game in, what's your personal thoughts on Southend versus York, I don't think whatever the result is, it judges too much about either side's season overall.
No, not necessarily, but early on in the season, Luke, you can probably I don't suppose you can win the title, but you can push yourself out of the title race. You look at York. They managed to get themselves a win in the end at Truro. I think we both suggested that we thought Truro might go 1-0 up because of the home tie and the occasion, and York will come out and then steamroll them effectively. I think it took York till 80 plus minutes to get the goals they needed to win the game. So, York certainly aren't firing on all cylinders. Southend, as we know, scored 5, let none in, top of the league. That they've really come out of the blocks, and it's now up to Southend. Now they've got that 6 points and those 2 wins and 2 clean sheets, is to build on that as a contender for the title. The likes of Wealdstone and Scunthorpe are up there at the moment. I can't for 1 minute imagine that we'll be talking about them in April or May, March, April, May time being at the top, but you would with Southend. So Liz, I think it may be slightly too early to suggest one or the other, whoever wins will win the league. But I think you can really make sure that you're going to set a foot in to push on and become a title challenger. And for them to play each other on match day 3 is a real fillip for the league, and it's a good test for both clubs.
Well, the Forest Green Rovers fan coming in as well. Another side that I don't think will be wanting to go away this season. They'll be looking to potentially go up automatically as well, albeit I think it'll be a little bit more tougher this season for them to maintain a top 3 finish, of course, under Robbie Savage. I think in the opening 2 games, though, to be fair, I think there's a few teething problems, but I think the way they like to play is something that's a lot easier on the eye, particularly for Forest Green Rovers fans. And speaking of Forest Green fans, we've got Cool, who's coming tonight. As a Forest Green fan, I think we have had a great chance of winning the league. We should have beat Yeovil 9-0, laughing emoji. York and Southend, and maybe Carlisle will be strong there, and maybe Rochdale. Well, that's 5 teams there. And this is what I mean last season. Who was they particularly who was alongside Forest Green? They were Barnet and York, and there were no one else who particularly tested any of those 3, whereas this season Rochdale have become a lot stronger. Southend have built on what they've already had. You've got Carlisle United who've come down and certainly aren't messing about with the investment that they've had in terms of bringing in players, and like I've said, York have only built on what they had last season. So you look at those sides, and I think for any side wanting to win the league this season, it's going to be particularly tough. I think York, obviously, as you'd expect, are the outright favourites just because they got 96 points last season and they've made 7 additions that would probably get into any other National League team in the league. But you just never know, and particularly when Rochdale, Southend, they're the 2 sides that I think have significantly strengthened in the summer, not just in terms of, I think, the investment. I think, Southend, what I think is quite important is that the solidity there. They've maintained what they had last season, which was effective, but then tweaked it by making 1 or 2 upgrades, 2 or 3 players in. And that's the same for both sides. And that's why I think you can't write them off from being involved in a title race as well. And of course, they've both started very well too. But Forest Green Rovers, I actually think, are a better side than what they were last season. I just think at the top end, it's a lot stronger this year.
No, you're right. There is more chat around teams that could potentially win the league and get promoted. Notwithstanding York are probably favourites, but but Forest Green Rovers bringing someone like Robbie Savage in, looking at their social media after the game, he's very infectious, isn't he? He wants to get the crowd going. He'll get them playing. He's not daft. He knows what it takes. I know but he's played at higher levels. He's seen his son play at the EFL and the National League, on loans and etc. So, he's not daft, and it's probably something that Forest Green Rovers need. No disrespect to Steve Cottrell, but I mentioned it before. They were very stagnant at that top end of the table for a long period of time last season, and that then didn't help when they went into that playoff knockout football. So, definitely Forest Green Rovers. It's nice to have a Forest Green Rovers fan online and listening. So welcome to him or her, and hopefully we'll get a bit more about what Forest Green Rovers are through them over the next few months. But listen, there's no easy games in this league. I think it's we talked about it last year. I think it's even more even this time around. So Anyone seems to be able to beat anyone when you look at the scores over the last 2 weekends. So, midweek games are always slightly different. Teams on the road, those that are part-time, the likes of Wealdstone having to travel, etc. So, it'd be interesting to see how the teams get on this midweek.
Just on the topic of that game, of course, from the Yeovil side of things, they did actually, of course, go down to 10 men. However, Mark Cooper's received a lot of criticism. I know a lot of the Yeovil fan base haven't been particularly keen on him remaining the manager in the summer. For me, I don't understand why. Like, I know Yeovil didn't pull up any trees last season. However, it was the first season in the National League. But I think in the summer, I think the business has been pretty good. And I don't think Yeovil's season is going to be judged on a game away at Forest Green Rovers yet. He's received an awful amount of criticism online saying that he needs to be moved on. What's your personal opinions on that?
Listen, it's very, very difficult, Luke. Football fans are very fickle. They want the best for their football club, and that's, completely understand that. They have invested. They've got a new owner. I think that's where he's on a sticky wicket, really, because new owners do like to bring their own people in. They have kept Mark Cooper on board at the moment, and if he doesn't start to pick up results, then it's going to be easier for them to say, well, we'll bring our own person in. He's not the only one under the cosh. There was rumours going around last night that Kelvin Davis had left Eastleigh and was sacked. Nothing's been confirmed, so he's still in charge there. Adam Lakeland at Halifax, he's new to the league, hasn't started well. Would he be under pressure? So I think, I don't think it just sits with someone like Mark Cooper, but clearly, they've got a vocal fan base. They've got a big fan base. They are expecting to be better than they were last year. 2 years ago, they won the National League South at a bit of a canter. Last year, was it a bit of a consolidation year? This year, is they going to try and push on and get into the playoffs? Is that what they want? So,
do you think that's what, just cutting in, do you think with Yeovil, the fan base there, Matt Cooper, do you think for them to be successful this season, it's got to be top 7?
I think so. When you look at the structure of the club, the size of the club, yes, they've been in the Championship many moons ago, but they have been in the Championship. They've moved their training base from Somerset to Bristol, you're locally in Yeovil, down up to Bristol, try and get a better sort of environment for them to train in, try and, I guess, maybe to entice players they might not have been able to if they're in Yeovil. To then go and sort of lose at Forest Green and, not the start of the season particularly well. 0-0 at Hartlepool, you give him that. But 1 point from 6 is not something that they would want with the investment and the new owners and the new training base. And the problem is Mark Cooper was under a little bit of cosh anyway, because last season they sort of fell away a little bit. They sort of just stagnated and were treading water a bit in that middle of the league. So yeah, he's going to be under pressure, rightly or wrongly. That's just how it is, Luke. That's what football fans are like. And I can guarantee Halifax in a few games' time, if they don't pick up points, that guy will be asked, is he out of his depth? Does he know what he's doing? Yeah. Sam Cox, it might happen, turn on its head at Wealdstone, 1-2, lose the next 4 or 5. It's really, really difficult because fans are fickle. They do want the best for their football club. And I suppose it mirrors ownership a little bit because there's no patience in it either. So, those that have been patient, Southend, look what they're getting now with Kevin Mayer as an example. Hartlepool haven't been patient. They keep changing.
Halifax, Chris Millington, he's someone who could have been sacked as well. A lot of, I think the ownership were patient with him, and you saw what, Halifax got out of him.
So there's no right or wrong answer. I'm not purveying to the fact that I think Mark Cooper should be sacked or stayed. Adam Lakeland should be sacked. It's each to their own. It's a really, really difficult one, and I don't think anyone has the answer. It's each their own individual decisions, how clubs are run, how owners see it, and that's just how football is.
I think for me, the difference when I look at Yeovil and why I'm a bit shocked by it. I think a lot of it is because of last season. You've mentioned there about, particularly towards the end of the season, how they fell away. We have to remember, up until about February, Yeovil were in and around the playoffs, and then they slipped away to about 17th, 16th by the end of last season, particularly the final few games as well. I think they lost the final 3 games on the bounce in the division. So it's not how you really want to end a season. And yeah, they've not pulled up any trees at the start of this season, but a point against Hartlepool for me, I think on the opening day, I don't think it's an awful result, albeit they didn't score. Forest Green Rovers away, we both expected them to pick up something, but we thought that would be kind of a shock and quite a bold prediction for them to pick up something from that game, because you look at the quality Forest Green have got going forward, and they haven't been thumped by them. Yes, potentially they could have. If you look at the highlights, Forest Green certainly could have probably won 4 or 5-0 that game, but they've only lost 2-0, and they're only 2 games into the season. I think for me, Cooper's going to be judged on Brackley at home coming up, Braintree away, and Gateshead at home. Now, for me, if you want to get the playoffs, you expect them to win all of them games, I think, particularly when you look at those 3 sides. Brackley had a good win on the opening day, didn't play the other week, a bit of an unknown quantity. But we know they're not going to, it's unlikely they're going to be aiming for the playoffs. Braintree, of course, beat Halifax, but lost to Hartlepool, who Yeovil managed to get a point against. You expect Yeovil should be favourites going into that. And then Gateshead, for me personally, I'm still not sold on them, although they beat Eastleigh. That's something else I want to come on to, Eastleigh. We speak about managers being under significant pressure. Now, I think it's very unfair on Mark Cooper at this point at the moment. Kelvin Davis, on the other hand, the financial backing he's got there, if you look at the players he's got to his disposal there, particularly from last season as well, he's got to be under an enormous amount of pressure. The opening 2 games, lose to a newly promoted Brackley. I expected that to happen, and I think Joe did when he was on with me as well, did. But still, Eastleigh, with the squad they've got, should not be losing away to a newly promoted side. And then in the second game, they lost to Gateshead, who, for me personally, I'm still not sold on at all. If you look at both goals that Gateshead scored, Eastleigh's positioning was just completely awful. The first goal, albeit I think, was a great finish. That's another one to add to the other 3 goals with Dom Telford that we've not actually mentioned yet. So you could do your top 4 there, but it was a great finish. But for me, still, I'm not particularly sold on Gateshead, particularly defensively, and Eastleigh didn't show anything, albeit I think a goal was disallowed for them.
Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? Because it's only 2 games in, Luke, and it's you could say, oh, Gateshead aren't this, Eastleigh aren't that. It's going to be easier to judge it after 6, 7, 8, 9 games, 10 games potentially. And Gateshead have had to do what they've done. They've gone to the Eastleigh, who aren't particularly good, and they've reversed a 3-0 thrashing on the first day to go and beat Eastleigh at home away, which you can't ask for more than that. And they'll probably have harder games. It's probably a good time to play Eastleigh, like it was with Wealdstone playing Halifax. You've got better times to play teams, and you've got to take advantage of that. So it'd be interesting to see what Gateshead do in the week. They've got to go to Rochdale. That's going to be a real tough one for them, and I guess that will sort of help us see what they're like against one of the top teams, considering they've been classed as one of those top better sides in the league over the last few years. Yeah,
I think Eastleigh have got to go to Aldershot on Tuesday evening for them specifically. As well, we've had Joe who's come in tonight, and he said, someone's actually mentioned I can hear tech audio twice, lol. Can someone in the chat just mention because for me, it sounds fine now. I know we had a few issues earlier on. Of course, we're trying to work on that. We didn't have the best audio last week from my side of things, I know. But we've had Joe who's coming tonight, of course, from Off the Line blog. Speaking of the man, evening chaps tuning in tonight to give the pod a listen while finishing a few pieces for the blog this week. Looking forward to the review and preview. Yeah, Joe's also written a new book about rising stars who've gone from the National League or non-leaguers in general all the way to the Premier League. I think specifically for me, the one that stands out is Jim Vardy. I think Damari Gray will probably be in it. You just think of, I think, was Ollie Watkins? I think he were down in the National League as well in the past. Mickey's coming tonight, of course. A Gateshead supporter. We hadn't seen him in the opening 2 episodes. Evening, lads. Congrats, Paul. Will Harris discuss? Well, the striker who's signed for Halifax. That's a good topic to come on for, to be fair. Cheers for that, Mickey. The red card, I think that's something we need to speak about. I actually thought it looked pretty lively up until that red card for Halifax. What's your thoughts on the red card? Of
I thought it was harsh. We both agreed. We felt the referee had a very good game. Really, you know, nationally refs do get criticised, and I think quite rightly on a lot of occasions. But the referee on Saturday refereed the game very well. You know, maybe he could have been a bit more officious with yellow cards to stop the pulling and the pushing and all the sort of silly niggly fouls. But you know, a lot of the time that can't be helped because it's the players that are doing it. I think he got all he got the main decisions right. I think one of those that, you know, I think we both sort of agreed that it probably wasn't a red card from where we were, but it's hard to say from where he was in terms of what he saw, whether it was a red card or not. There, I think a good judge of it, and we spoke about it at the time, was Will Harris never complained. You know, whether he's that type of character and he just accepts what happens and he's, you know, very respectful and he takes it rather than sort of losing his head and saying what you're doing. Some of his teammates did sort of make a point to the ref, but in all, it felt like it was the right decision based on the reaction of the players. I thought it was a little bit harsh because there was no malicious intent, but again, not knowing the rules fully around that type of interaction or tackle, it's difficult to say. But I think the referee proved that throughout the 90 minutes, I think he had a fairly decent game, and it maybe killed the game as a bit of a spectacle. It really didn't help Halifax having come off the 3-0 reverse. You know, he wanted to come to the Vale and try and do a bit. And after 15 minutes, having missed the penalty, they're then down to 10 men. And their game plan changed. They took off Bray. They put on Power, who's got a bit of legs. They tried their best to, you know, try and get something off restarts and free kicks, which they did in the first half. But yeah, I mean, it was a tough afternoon for Halifax. On the whole, Wealdstone just had to be patient. So poor old Will Harris is, you know, season's going to be stop-start. He's now going to have 1 or 2 game ban. I don't know whether it's even 3. So, you know, Halifax are going to have to maybe put David Cower in from the start and just see how they go in the week when they, when they come up against Boston.
Yeah, he's not had the best start to life at the Sherman. Of course, on the opening game, we missed a penalty late on against Braintree, and then in his second game for Halifax, he's got sent off, and you do have to have a lot of sympathy for him because, one, missing a penalty, it can happen to anyone. It is down to luck a lot of the time, but the second game as well, it's classed as a high foot, yet the Wealdstone man's head kind of went down a little bit. So I'm not, I just think for me, the rules are, he should be sent off because it's a high foot, but I think if you actually look at the factors to it in the background, I just think it's extremely harsh to have sent him off for that. And for me, I have sympathy because I actually think he's got a lot of potential. Pre-season scored a lot of goals for us as well. I think if you look at his body language on the pitch, he looks like a proper striker at this level, which is something that Halifax have missed in the last couple of seasons since Waters left. So I do hope that when he comes back, he can return it and get scoring because I think he has got potential to. Be a Monster's coming tonight and said, "Hi guys, look forward to going toe-to-toe with so-called champions-elect. We'll be going for 3 points and have every chance of getting them." Yeah, I think what's key for Southend is the fact that they've got home form. But of course, we're going to speak about that in a lot more detail later on in the podcast. Someone said first, I think Cook's goal is the best goal of the game week. He's also gone on to say first Cook, second Alawaki, third Linney, surely due to this deflection. Everyone's mentioned it. Of course, Rob, who's been on the podcast, just messaged me and said Cook's goal was good, but not a patch on Linney's class turn and whipped finish over defence and keeper. Now, for those who are saying that, including myself, is that because we're not spotting the deflection? Because at first, it was I ain't seen I can't see the deflection when I watch it. I don't think it's that obvious. And does it really affect it that much? I don't know.
Yeah, of course it does. Because if he doesn't deflect it, the keeper's saving it. It's not even a goal.
Do you think?
Is it?
No, we won't really deflect. It literally flicked off his head.
Exactly, but a flick of the head moves the ball from there to there.
Did it really? Nah, it was good. You could see with his foot. It was aiming to the top right corner, the far right corner.
But the keeper might have been able just to palm it away, catch it, push it over the bar. He's got caught out by the deflection. It's flicked off him. It's quick. Listen, it's not a bad goal, Luke, by any stretch of imagination. But I think it's easy to sort of say, well, the deflections helped him. Whether it did or not, I don't know, but I personally think it probably did. So, you know, whereas Jack Cook didn't, there was no deflection on Jack Cook's. He found the top corner and hit that stanchion beautifully.
Fair. We'll have to agree to disagree then, I suppose. And then we've also had coming tonight, we've had Villa TV, of course, a Tamworth fan. Big up, lads, not a good start for us, but should be a win at home on Tuesday. Yeah, that's I think an early 6-pointer for those two sides. That's a huge match because I think both sides will aim is to survive this season. Both haven't got off to the best of starts, and the two sides that often get written off. So I think for this one, it's a huge match because whoever wins, it could really propel their season to get a few points on the board and get away from that drop zone. Because I don't know why I get the impression, but I look at a Truro, I look at a Tamworth, although I think I've had them both to survive, I could also see them being two sides that if they don't start well, I could see them be really, really struggling and to get out of the bottom four. Is that something you'd agree with? Or?
Oh, yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. It's like winning breeds confidence and good habits. Losing does exactly the same, Luke. It's, you know, you get into a rut and you can't get out of it. And it may take a bit of luck. It may take, you know, a bit of hard work, a change of a fortune in terms of player movements, loan, whatever it may be. But, you know, you want to get a winning culture rather than that losing culture. And, you know, if you look at Boston, was a prime example back in the last season. That around Christmas time onwards, they won and they won and they won, and it just kept going. So, yeah, teams don't want to go on this run, especially early on in the season where they're losing 3, 4, 5 games and only picking up 1 or 2 points across that, you know, across those games as well. So, yeah, you listen, Tamworth, Truro, Wealdstone, Brackley, even the likes of maybe Braintree, Gateshead, all want points on the board because it's going to, what did it take? 53, 54 points to survive last season. That's a tough ask. You know, that's having to win 20, near enough, 18 games of National League football. That's a real tough ask. So if you can get points on the board whilst you can, take advantage of it.
I think as well, when you're going on bad runs of form, it can really be significantly detrimental, particularly in this league, because you look last season at the table, you've mentioned there the points tally to go down. It was actually only 68 points for the playoffs. So aside, it's 16 points in it. 16 points in it from getting relegated to having an opportunity to get promoted via the playoffs. Now, 16 points, you break that down, that's
just over 5
wins. 5 wins and a draw. Yeah, it's not. I know it sounds like a lot, but it's not that much considering the difference in terms of going down and being within a chance of getting promoted. And you know, 5 or 6 games can be played over a month, less than a month, to be honest, at times, can't it? So for me, I just think, you know, you've got to be consistent over the course of the season. And when you're starting poor, like Tamworth and Truro have, and I don't want to go overboard because it is only 2 games in, but if they lose that 3rd game, then for the losers, it's not going to leave them in good stead for a start of the season, because I just feel for those sides, they can't afford to start poor. York, for me, I think they're a little bit shaky at the moment. They can afford to start poor and still probably go on to win the league, I think, overall. Carlisle, new to the division, can start poor, but will, over time, you know, improve. Halifax, I think, can probably start poor. Eastleigh can probably start poor and will still be okay from relegation. Where Truro and Tamworth, particularly because I think they're at the strongest at this point in the season now, but before they've had any injuries because they're quite small squads and probably don't have the investment to be able to recruit heavily throughout the season, they need to get off to good starts, I think, and get the points on the board early for them to survive this season. Hazard actually come in and said, Harry Boyes is an utter joke, gone from having probably the worst left back in the league to the best overnight. I think for me and Harry Boyes as well, he's a prime example of Southend potentially not signing, you know, the standout name that will, you know, attract a lot of media attention, but going the other way and being strategic with the additions that they've made. I think, you're bringing in Harry Boyes as a young lad, a smart player that works in Southend's system. Like, there's other players that you could probably go out there who's a left wing back, but wouldn't actually work in Southend's system and the way they like to play. Sam Austin, I think, is the missing piece in the jigsaw this season for them as well. In that attacking midfield role, it gives them another option now to be able to break teams down, which I think Southend struggled with at times last season. They've got that player now that's got that bit of creativity in there, which complements the likes of Force and Parallon as well behind. And then they've brought in a target man like Andrew Dallas to as well complement Charlie Kendall up top, who's been prolific for them. I just think Southend at the moment, I think people should really watch this space, particularly with the way they've started the season as well. They're really growing on me.
No, yeah, without doubt. Like I said, 5 points, 5 goals, no goals conceded. They've signed Boys. They brought in Andrew Dallas. They got Parallon from the back end of last season from Slough and from Slough last season. Then they got Slavy Spazov. So they're looking at a little bit of youth, a little bit of untapped potential, some projects that will go along with the experience they already have. They kept Goodliff as well, who's experienced at this level from Sutton United, and was it Colchester he came from, or Gillingham? So they're a good footballing side, and the benefits of keeping Kevin Mayer and his team together, riding through that bad patch, is now hopefully going to sort of become fruitful for them as Southend fans, and they're going to be very optimistic. And Wednesday night's a real tough game against York, and I think they will really sort of stamp their credentials by playing well against York and potentially getting a result against them as well.
We've had Jamie Scarborough, who's a channel member, said he's in tonight. Says the audio's good. Cheers for tuning in, Jamie, and thanks for being a channel member. Speaking of channel members, we've also got Caroline, who's an Aldershot fan, tonight with the Aldershot emoji. That is something as well to mention. If you want to become a channel member, you do get to use custom emojis for your club in the live chat. If you'd like that, just for £2.99 a month, and you get early access to interviews that we do as well. Jamie Scarborough's also said York were very average yesterday, but the wind was awful, and it's a great away win. Be tough going there when it's winter. Potentially in Truro's eyes, that could be a potential strength for them. Winter's often a time that sounds like you'd expect with the lazy eye, the likes of Truro would struggle in, but potentially it could be when they thrive. We've had Jake who said, evening fellas, spent the whole summer looking for Paul's prediction league doubters from last season, and I couldn't find any. Invest your stocks when they are down, printing money. Well, we'll be coming on to the predictions league shortly, won't we, Paul? And it's not been the best of starts for you.
No, I don't know. You could show him if you want, Luke. It wasn't great this weekend, was it?
Not for me. Yeah, no, it wasn't at all. It was actually, I don't think Joe did you any favours. You did better than him, to be fair. But yeah, it wasn't too good at all, was it, for you?
No, you did better than Halifax did, mate. So, it's 9 points is a decent return on Saturday for you. It's I think getting the Southend result was a very good one. That bolstered it a little bit, but you're picking up the ones that put points here and there was good for you. So I'm hoping that tomorrow and Wednesday's offerings are going to be a little bit better, and hopefully I can get myself back into the frame, because like I've just said, you can't win the league at this stage, but you can certainly try and start losing it, and I think that's what's happening with me.
Yeah, we've had JB. Speaking of comebacks, last season, the closest thing you will ever see to Boston's comeback will be your predictions league. Coming back from that, we've had a Boston fan in tonight. Welcome to the stream. We've had Mickey, who's coming in and said, was one hell of a goal by Cook. Hell of a goal. You've caught me out there by Cook, Paul. Linney's was a bit of class too. Cook's goal, who doesn't have a thunder blast from range in the top bins. We had Shay as well, who's coming and said, where can we watch National League highlights? TNT Sports stopped doing them, I think. Great podcast. I think DAZN, they were putting them out last season. I don't know what the plan is this season, whether they're going to do it straight afterwards or not. Of course, the games now are on DAZN, which is similar to TNT Sports. And to be fair to DAZN as well, I think it's always hard and we'll speak about this probably on another podcast in more detail, but I think it's always hard when you're a new, well, not a new company as such, but coming into a league where TNT Sports have kind of shined a light on for the last decade or so. It's always hard when you're coming in and taking over for them. And I think, to be fair, people have their opinions about it, but I actually think overall there's certain things they do, which I think are quality, the behind the scenes things that I don't think TNT actually ever did. So I think there's only a company for me that I think are only getting better in terms of how they're shining a light on the National League overall, in my opinion. Then we've also had Click Faster said we'll be investing into August and start for September Women's Rugby World Cup using the linear. York City are unable to play at home with 4 away games on the trot and no game for the next 2 Saturdays. I think Halifax are in the same situation as well, where we haven't been able to play at home so far. I think our first home fixture is actually on Saturday against Forest Green Rovers, but it's not really how you want to start a season, 3 back-to-back away games. And I think for York, although they start the opening game week, at home, because they haven't picked the result up at home, to then have to go away every week, it's not ideal, I don't think, and it's a big inconvenience, particularly when you think of travel. But I think if there's any side that's equipped for it, it would be York City.
No, yeah, you're right. York will probably benefit from it later on in the season when they get a couple of home games on the bounce and teams are having to travel. So, listen, like you said, they're full time, they're well equipped, they'll be able to travel. They get good numbers traveling and following them, so it's not like they're going to be playing in front of nobody in terms of their own fans. So, yeah, listen, they'll be able to deal with it, and as long as the rugby league doesn't affect the pitch quality too much, because I know York like to try and play, then I don't see any problem with them having to sort of go on the road just for a few weeks. Interesting early part of the season because it helps us with predictions and talking points, but I think inwardly they'll be fine and they'll deal with it, no worries at all.
Zach's come in and said Jamie Miley looking very good for Pools as play that has gone under the radar. Yeah, of course, he came from Newcastle United's academy. Actually was at Hartlepool last season, but didn't particularly play that much for them. Of course, in the midfield this season, looking to come on himself. Is he? It might actually be. I'm sure he's got a brother who's actually at Newcastle at the moment. Is that actually his brother? Yeah. I thought it would be.
Yeah, Lewis Miley, yeah. So, I mean, comes from good footballing pedigree. And, as long as these lads, there's many footballers like that come out of academy, Prem academies, EFL academies, and it's just adapting to that National League football, which is, essentially you have to play for 3 points every week. Academies a lot around the development and learning, etc. And so the winning possibly isn't always the main factor. Here, you've got full-time footballers who are relying on their salaries to pay their mortgages and etc. So, it's a different kettle of fish. And if you can adapt to that mentality and that mindset out of academy football into that first team football, then technically they're all very good footballers and they've got good footballing brains. They can adapt to that mentally and physically, then they'll always end up going and having a good career, be it in National League or back into the EFL.
Another question for you as well on the topic of that, because it just comes to my head. I've always wanted to ask you this. Hutchinson, who's at Wealdstone, who came on, he's definitely the brother, isn't he, of the Hutchinson for Ipswich? He must be.
No, he's not. No.
Is he not? They look like each other as well, though, don't they? So I was surprised.
No, Dom's dad, Dom Hutchinson, we're talking about. Dom was in the academy at Watford, and as far as I know, his dad was a non-league footballer locally and played to a fairly decent level locally to where we are. But I don't. There may be some relationship there, Luke, but I don't believe they're brothers.
I think there's some sort of relationship there, to be honest, because they look like each other as well. Anyway, that's enough of us waffling. Now, we will come back to the live chat as we proceed in the podcast. But we're coming up, we've actually got our National League, game week predictions to actually do. Please remember to like and subscribe. It really does go a long way. Over 70 of you watching at the moment. it doesn't take much effort at all. Just press that button and you're doing me a massive favour if you do that. And of course, subscribe. But if you want to see regular National League content, also our channel sponsors, cards accepted. It says 24.25. That's I need to correct that shortly. But they're sponsoring us as well for this season too. Please check them out. There's a link in the description to do that. You get 50% off your card machine if you do that too. Also, Paul, your company sponsors, of course, the Predictions League. Do you want to make people aware of that?
If you want a holiday, give us a shout. You know where I am. You can find me on Twitter. Drop me a line if you want any travel requirements whatsoever. Then we'll be happy to help you.
Brilliant. Right, we will be back in a second then for our game week predictions.
I can't hear you, Luke. Am I meant to be talking?
Please don't tell me I've been speaking for that long without actually anyone know. Oh God, what was I actually speaking that long without anyone knowing?
Well, I personally couldn't hear you, and I sent you a message just to say, but I wasn't sure when you were stopping or what have you. So I don't know if anyone else could hear you. But...
Oh no, I've just been speaking anyway. I'll redo that then. This is the issue when it's live now. I can't even edit that out now. But anyway, yeah, starting with the opening fixture, we've got Boston versus Halifax. Halifax not had the best of starts, back-to-back away defeats. This is the final away game on the trot before they do actually get to go back to the Shea for their opening fixture since a new pitch has been laid. As for Boston, didn't play the opening game week. Got off to a great start though in the second game week. Of course, defeating Aldershot away from home. How do you see this one going, Paul?
I have gone with the Boston win, purely obviously what I saw of the back of Halifax and how they were and how they've done. And Boston are at home again. It's, I always look at this home advantage and hope that gives them some sort of benefit. So I've gone with the Boston to win 2-0.
For me, for this one, potentially a bit of bias. I just feel there are a lot of positives to take from that Wealdstone game away from home, particularly we're down to 10 men. I think if it was 11v11, I still stand by the point. I actually think Halifax would have gone on to win that game, in my opinion. And I actually think when it were 10 men against 11 men, when we got that equaliser, if it wasn't for Cook's goal, I think Halifax probably had the momentum to go on to win that game. But I think that goal just changed the momentum and the swing of the game overall. So I think for me, there's the sparks there that I like the look of. And I think we are due a little bit of luck. And I think against a tough Boston side, I think it's quite a big ask for us to go there and get all 3 points, particularly when we're a new team. But I think we'll be able to get a point out of this game. I think Boston, it's only the second game. Of course, they've had a good start going away to Aldershot, but it's a different type of game against a different sort of team in Halifax. And I think defensively, I think we're pretty solid. I think we're looking solid after that second game. In my opinion, I think we were done by a bit of class, to be honest, overall. So, yeah, I think it'll be a 1-1 draw for this game. We'll move on to the next one now. I'm actually going to go to Carlisle United fixture against Solihull Moors. Now, there's a lot of questions to be asked to Mark Hughes and Carlisle as a football club this week, particularly after dropping points on Saturday. Now, we've spoke, haven't we, about Carlisle coming into this division and being a big fish, and how in the past that's not meant that much in the National League, particularly considering that no side's bounced straight back up into the division. Albeit Carlisle had a good opening game week away at Woking, they dropped points to Boreham Wood. They were actually 3-1 up at times at one point, and Boreham Wood managed to come back in that game. I think the main question is defensively, Carlisle, that seems to be where they're the most vulnerable at. And if sides can outscore Carlisle United, that's the way to beat them. The question is, do you think Solihull Moors have the ability to outscore Carlisle?
No. No. I've actually gone with Carlisle 3, Solihull 0. That might be a bit of a wild one, but what's that music?
What music? What was that? Was that you or myself?
Oh my god! Apologies, that must have been something that my computer set. I apologize. I don't know what the hell that was.
It's not going well tonight.
There was YouTube was open. I had no idea, and it's obviously come on. So apologies. It's I wasn't using this computer before. But my wife was using it, so she had something on YouTube, and it's whatever's come on. So apologize. Carlisle 3, Solihull 0. I think to be 3-1 up and to then lose it, that's a little bit disappointing. But the good thing is for Carlisle, a bit like Southend, is they scored 5 goals in 2 games, and I think Solihull aren't as strong as they were last year, and I think Carlisle will comfortably win at home. Yeah, it's a bit of a trek for Solihull as well midweek. I think Carlisle win 3-0.
Big question. To be fair, I won't say it's a statement, because I think going forward, Carlisle are as good as anyone in this division. I actually think when you look at the front line of them, the likes of Linney, Armstrong, Adjaboy, and then Embleton, if they can get the best out of him, you look at that 4, that's ridiculous for this division, particularly Regan Linney, who I'm praising quite a lot on tonight's podcast, which I think you can fairly say is, I think, deserved for him because of what he did the other day, scoring 2 goals as well. But I just think him as an individual, he can change a game. Solihull have actually had a fairly decent start. I think going away to Forest Green and getting a point there down to 10 men's a strong point. But then also against Sutton, another point. I think you've got to respect those 2 results. But I just think Carlisle potentially away from home are a different kettle of fish. And albeit defensively, there's areas that you can particularly exploit. Do Solihull have the attacking players to be able to exploit Carlisle? For me personally, no, and I think Carlisle will be able to win this game 2-0. I think overall, is that a concern? Do you think for Carlisle? Is of course Terrell Thomas and Hayden. Of course, if you look at history, they're 2 very well respected centre halves, but as a pair in the last couple of seasons, it's clearly not worked. And if you base it off that Boreham Wood game, it didn't work even in that game either.
Yeah, maybe it's. I mean, the good thing is for Carlisle, in Carlisle's perspective, is they've probably got a budget. They've probably got the ability to go and replace those or help them if they need to. I don't think they need to panic just yet. It may be, like I said, a bit disappointing. You're 3-1 up, comfortably 3-1 up. against a team that just got promoted, who aren't, Boreham aren't renowned for scoring hundreds of goals, scoring lots of goals rather in games. So that might be slightly disappointing, but it's Mark Hughes will know Mark Hughes will know what's required, and I'm pretty sure they're already looking at it and addressing that, and they'll sort that out on the training field as well. So if it continues, they'll change it, and there's no two ways about that, because they want to be up there near the top of the league.
Moving on to the next fixture then that we will take a look at, we are going to head to which one was it now? We're going to go to Altrincham versus Hartlepool. This is quite a hard prediction for me when you look at two sides. I think Altrincham, to be fair, I think have got off to a decent start. I think performances-wise, specifically, I'll say a decent start. Of course, they defeated Aldershot at home. Defensively, yes, there's areas of improvement, I think, based on the opening two games, with some of the goals that they have conceded specifically. However, I think when you look at them as a footballing side, they're pretty good. I think going forward, there doesn't seem to be any serious concerns. I think the Ward, who's of course signed from Boston, had a great strike against Rochdale. And of course, Reading as well on the right-hand side seems to like the type of player that's got a lot of potential. I think he showed sparks of that last season. I think this season, potentially with Newby and Linney leaving, it gives a bit of room for him to potentially be able to come on and be more of the star man and the centerpiece for them. I think they were a little bit just outclassed against Rochdale. I think the look at the goals that Rochdale scored, I think you've got to applaud it, to be fair. However, coming up against the Hartlepool side that are yet to concede a goal, it might be a tricky game. Of course, Hartlepool themselves point away at Yeovil, a strong point, I think, and then defeating Braintree and not really looking like they were in any danger of conceding in either game, to be fair.
No, you're right. And they say defences win titles. We just talked about Carlisle defensively a little bit shaky. Southend, Hartlepool haven't let goals in. I've actually gone for a 2-2 draw because I think they're both capable of scoring goals. Yes, Hartlepool have been good defensively, but Altrincham are very capable of scoring a goal. And Altrincham will try and play. Hartlepool will have a different type of way of playing to Altrincham. It almost they'll clash a little bit, I think. Pools will be maybe a little bit more direct, a little bit bigger, stronger. Altrincham will always try and play. And it'll be an interesting sort of clash of identities. But yeah, I think this would be an entertaining game. And I've gone for a 2-2 draw based on the fact that Altrincham, I think, can score goals. Although Pools are miserly, they can score goals too. And I think it will be a good scoring draw.
I think the signing of the summer for Hartlepool on paper was Alex Reid. And of course, he comes with quite a high reputation. He's got a lot of pressure on, I think for him at Hartlepool this season with Dis Ruwe leaving. He's expected to produce the goals. And of course, he scored against Braintree from the penalty spot. For me in this one, though, specifically, I think it's a football. I think it's a really good football inside in Altrincham against the Hartlepool side. I think looking to go that way this season more than being seen as that direct side from last season, particularly when you actually look at their recruitment specifically. For me, for this one, I think it's a tough one to call. And I think at this stage of the season, I can't really pick a winner. I think both sides will be looking at the right end of the table this season. I'm actually going to go for a 1-1 draw for this one. So we have both gone for a draw. Moving on to the next fixture, then it is, of course, not Scunthorpe, sorry, I should say. The next fixture is, I'm trying to remember here, because I don't have my phone with me to where the fixtures actually are. Truro versus Tamworth, that was actually it that we're going to take a look at now. We've spoke about this fixture, haven't we, earlier in the podcast. How do you see it going?
This is a real tough one for Truro, isn't it? Coming off the back of 2 defeats. It's a long journey up to the Midlands. Tamworth adapted well to the league last year. They adapted better after seeing Truro. It looks like they're going to take a while to adapt. Tamworth did it very, very well. and they will be too strong for Truro. I think physically too strong, too direct. Truro tried to play when I saw him at the Vale 2 weeks ago. Young Fisher up top was okay, but they just lack that physicality, which I think Tamworth have in abundance. I know they've had to change their squad a little bit. Lost Shikula, lost Creaney, but I think Tamworth will use that long throw, restarts, set pieces to sort of pepper Truro. And I don't think it will be high score. I've gone with a Tamworth to win 1-0. I don't think it'll be particularly high scoring, but I think Tamworth will come out on top. I know they're going to need it. They need the points on the board as well as Truro.
I'm a bit fearful about the actual forward lines of both sides specifically. I think it feels to me like Truro are going to rely quite heavily on Harvey. If you look at the York game, though, I actually thought Truro looked pretty good at times and potentially had opportunities to actually take the lead. And I think that's got to give them a lot of confidence, I think, going into this one against Tamworth, away from home. Travelling for them, it's a long way on a Tuesday night to Tamworth. And I think they'll be very disappointed if they don't get anything out of the game. But, what kind of impressed me was how they looked at that game, and John Askey came out and interviewed, and instead of saying, "Oh, unfortunate," and look, we're not going to be judged off that York game, which I don't think they are over the course of the season, he actually was very disappointed with the actual goals they conceded, because I can see why they're frustrated, Truro. I thought they were very much within the game for large parts, and they kind of gifted York a goal by some very, very poor defending, which led to York's first goal. And, of course, the second was probably due to them pushing forward too much. So I just feel like they're going to regroup in this one, go away to Tamworth. And I think Tamworth had a very difficult start to the season with the results that they've got. Truro, an unknown quantity, will be looking to get the 3 points. I think that's the way they will be wanting to play. And I'm actually going to go for the reverse fixture to you. I'm actually going to go for a 1-0 Truro win, which will actually be their first win in the National League in their history. Moving on to the next fixture now, we're going to go to Aldershot versus Eastleigh. Aldershot losing their opening 2 games. So have Eastleigh. However, I think Aldershot can take more out of those 2 defeats. I think there's signs of promise there. And I think you look at those performances, you look at those results, in both games on another day, they would have got something out of both of those games compared to Eastleigh, where I think they've been poor on both occasions.
No, you're right. It's we've always said with Aldershot, you're always likely to get goals because they've been okay up top. Some better season than others, but they're generally okay. Play on the front foot. Defensively, they've always been that little bit open. Eastleigh, we don't know what sort of state they're in internally in terms of management. Is he there? Is he not there? I think we had a discussion on a small sort of WhatsApp group, and there was a sort of the Eastleigh recruitment was all a little bit odd this summer. Stuart Donald has gone back there over the last couple of years. He's obviously got a bit of cash, but it just seems a bit odd in terms of who they've recruited. Kelvin Davis, I know you're not a massive fan, Luke. He's not really one that's a prominent manager at that level. He came out of academy football and he's not really set the world alight. So I don't really know what's going on with EC. We just know that they're consistently inconsistent. So I think Aldershot will win this quite easily on Tuesday night, whenever they play. I think, looking at that, I think they're going to win 3-0 in the end. And Kelvin Davis might not be the manager after it.
I would say great likes do think alike, to be honest, Paul, because I had 3-0, but I'll change it up a bit. I'm actually going to go for 4-0 then. I'll go an extra one. Very similar reasons to you. You speak about the manager being there or potentially not being there. Whatever happens, if he's in the dugout on Tuesday night, it's not a good start, is it? And it can't do the players any good when there's all these rumours going around. As well, I think Eastleigh are still coming together as a squad. And I just think potentially it feels like they're not playing for the manager, which is quite strange at this stage of the season, particularly with it only being 2 games gone. And I think Aldershot are due a result. I think they've worked particularly hard in those 2 games. They're bound to score goals. They've scored 4 goals in their opening 2 games, and they've not picked up a point yet. And I think I can't see them not getting anything out of a game at Eastleigh, where they do look wounded at the moment. And I think it is a good time for them to be playing them. And, you can't slip up, I don't think, against Aldershot and come into the game with the effort potentially not being there under the manager and all these issues potentially off the field at the moment, because Aldershot have the players to be able to score a lot of goals, and they won't just win when you're like this, like Eastleigh are at the moment in the position they are. They'll win quite comfortably, and that's why I'm going for. I was saying 3-0, but I'll go for 4-0. It's pretty much the same thing, isn't it, Paul?
Yeah, that's fair enough. That's fair enough.
Go on, sorry, Paul.
No, I was going to say it's fair enough going for 4. I mean, you'd like to think Eastleigh aren't going to lose 4-0, because that will be an awful result for them, and potentially their manager if he's still in charge, etc. So, yeah, I think it could be one of those easier nights for Aldershot on paper. We'll see what happens in reality.
Woking versus Wealdstone then. Wealdstone maximum points from the opening 2 games. You can't ask for much more than that. Woking, high expectations for them this season. I think a lot of people had them as a bit of a dark horse, yet they've not got off to the best of starts, losing their opening 2 games. I actually think Woking will pick a win up here against Wealdstone. I think potentially they were a little bit fortunate on Saturday in terms of the opposition going down to 10 men. You may disagree with that. I thought the second goal was quality, to be fair. I don't think it really mattered that it was against 10 men. However, I think Woking, Neil Ardley's side, they were a well-drilled side. And I don't think people should really get too carried away in terms of them not having the best of starts. We're only 2 games in. 3rd game back at home. I think it's a good fixture for them. I know Wealdstone have started well, but being back at home, coming up against a side that I still think will be down there this season, I think Woking will be able to win this game 2-0. How do you see it going?
Wealdstone have never done brilliantly at Woking over the last few years, but I just feel, 6 points out of 6, 1 clean sheet. Defensively look okay. They do play nice football, Wealdstone, and this will be a real test for them going out on the road for the first time in this season. We've got Alfie Massey, who's come on loan from Millwall. He came on in the second half and really looked good. And I think what the pleasing thing for Wealdstone's perspective is that the bench that they've got, they can bring players on, and it won't necessarily weaken the team they've got. Listen, I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that we're going to stay in the playoff positions we're in at the moment, but they've started well. They're playing with confidence. Their bench is strong enough to replace those that are starting. And Woking have been a bit indifferent. I know we've got them as a bit of a dark horse going forward, Luke, and I can see them being up there because they're going to be organised under Ardley, and that's what's going to be tough. Wealdstone are going to have to do a similar thing to what they did to Halifax, but probably against 11 players in terms of trying to break them down. And Woking will have that quality going forward to try and punish us. So I've gone for a 2-2 draw. I just feel, we're playing Woking at the right time because we've got some good momentum and no injuries, etc. And Woking have been a little bit indifferent. Admittedly, they've played some tough games in Carlisle and Scunthorpe, but it should be a good game. It should be an interesting game. I'm just hoping Wealdstone come away with at least a point. I think it will be 2-2.
Thing is, what I will say about Woking is when you look at the opening 2 games, they're very well drilled, and you compare them to Halifax, and I do understand that. But what I will say, they're very familiar with each other at Woking, the actual 11s, where Halifax, we've mentioned there's a lot of new players coming in, but we still don't know the best 11. Neil Ardley will know his best 11. And you look at the Carlisle game, and I think that's a game that they won't be judged on. I actually thought maybe they'd have got something out of it, but I don't think you look at Carlisle, they can particularly be judged on that. Scunthorpe had a good start themselves. So, but I still feel, away from home, maybe you've expected them to do better there. But being back at home now against an opposition like Wealdstone, who will be like to play football, I think Woking will stop Wealdstone from actually playing football and will be able to score in this one. And I think it'll be a game for Wealdstone that will be quite frustrating because I think Woking will just stop them from playing and probably keep a lot of the ball. And I think Wealdstone will probably have very, very little opportunities. And if they do, they're going to have to take them, I think, in this match specifically. Mickey's come in and said, quick question, did Halifax have a man sent off yesterday? I'm not sure Luke mentioned it at all. I've hardly mentioned it so far, so I don't know what that's about, to be honest. But anyway, moving on to... That guy just likes to wind me up for the sake of it. Anyway, moving on to the next fixture that we'll have a look at. We are going to take a look at... We need to move away from SofaScore to get these up. We're going to go to Boreham Wood versus Braintree. Boreham Wood, good point away at Carlisle. I thought actually going forward, there were signs of promise there. I think Sousa's going to be crucial for them. It's just keeping him fit and him remaining consistent because, on his days, he's a quality player. He's just not been consistent over the last couple of seasons. Coming against the Braintree side, who had a good opening game week but lost away to Hartlepool. I think Boreham Wood defensively are really strong, and I think Braintree may struggle, attacking them. And I think I'd expect Boreham Wood on home soil to actually win this game 1-0. How do you see it going?
I've gone for Boreham Wood to win 3-2. I think
high scoring then.
Yeah, it's a bit of my rogue one, really. I mean, Braintree have started pretty well, considering we all thought they were going to struggle. So Boreham Wood to win 3-2 at home on that carpet of a pitch. I think they'll have a lot of confidence coming off the back of picking a point up off of Carlisle, especially being 3-1 down. That's going to really give them a little bit of a boost, I would suggest. And I mean, I know they lost to Rochdale. That's not anything to worry about. I don't think in the longer run. Wood will just want to try and stay in this league after getting relegated a couple of seasons ago rather. And I think, an entertaining 3-2 win for Boreham Wood.
These are the games that Boreham Wood have to be winning. I think everyone's aware that it's likely Braintree will be down there this season. I think on the other side, you could say it's the type of game that Braintree need to be getting something from as well, potentially. Moving on to the next fixture now that we'll take a look at. It is going to be, I believe it will actually be... Forest Green versus Sutton, two sides that both came down into this division 2 years ago. Sutton, I think, are expected to really push on this season after, I think, stabilising last season, a season of consolidation. There's probably more pressure on them this season to push for the playoffs. As for Forest Green, we've spoke about them already. Got a good win on Saturday away at home to Yeovil. Sutton, I think, will be a bit more of a difficult match. Defensively very strong. I think across the field very strong. And we saw what they did to York. They managed to get a point there later on. And I think they'll be able to get a point out of this one too. I'm actually going to go for a 2-2 draw. How do you see this one going?
Blimey, Luke. That's exactly what I've gone for. But I'm not going to change my mind. So I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw. I think you're right. It's this should be a good game. I think this is one of the games of the week. Forest Green are going to be buzzing after winning 2-0 at home. Sutton have done very well to get a draw out of York and do what they could to get a draw out of Solihull as well. So another draw for Sutton, and I think this will be a really good game for the National League, and I've gone with a 2-2 draw.
Moving on to the next fixture that we will take a look at. We've only got, I think, 3 left. I think it's got Scunthorpe. Oh, no, Scunthorpe are actually playing midweek.
Rochdale Gateshead.
Rochdale Gateshead will move on. So, take it away, Paul, while I try to get it up.
Yeah, Rochdale Gateshead. I mean, listen, Rochdale are one of those teams that are going to be wanting to stay up the top there. They've started very, very well. And we've spoken about their recruitment and how well they did last season, and they weren't able to, finish the job really, were they? Just fell short in the FA Trophy when they maybe should have won, just fell short in the playoffs when maybe they should have got to the final. Many thought they would. they're playing a Gateshead team who have been very indifferent over the 2 games, lost 3-0 and one at the weekend. And like you mentioned earlier, Luke, who knows what Gateshead team will turn up? We don't really know, do we? So we'll have to wait and see. But not a long journey for the Gateshead lot to go to Rochdale. That's going to be one of their more local teams that I should imagine midweek as well, which is helpful. So I think they'll put up a good fight, Gateshead, but I think Rochdale win 2-1.
I think Rochdale will win quite comfortably at home. I think it's going to be a really difficult place to go for a lot of sides this season. I'm going for a 3-0 Rochdale win. I just think you look at the lack of experience defensively that Gateshead have got. I just think the likes of Disaruwe will punish you. The way they play as well, you know, Rochdale with the likes of Alarakia, he's someone I think will come on more than what he did last season in terms of his actual goals that he'll get. But his crosses are going to be deadly. And for people like, you know, Disaruwe and Devante Rodney to get onto the end of, you know, I think they're really onto something Rochdale, in my opinion. And I just think across the side, they're just so balanced. The likes of East, Gilmore in that midfield. Yeah, I really like it. And I think they're a side that I really do want to keep an eye on this season. And I think at home, we're going to see some extremely good team goals, if that makes sense, in the build-up and the way they like to play under Jim McNulty, who I actually think he's someone a bit like Mark Cooper's got a lot of stick at Rochdale. I think he's criminally underrated, to be honest, as a manager in this division. I thought he did very well for a 4th place finish last season, albeit they failed in the playoffs. But no, I think at home, against that Gateshead side that I'm still not particularly sold on, if they keep a lot of the ball, I think Rochdale will win this game 3-0. We'll move on to the next fixture, which is Brackley. Yeovil versus Brackley. What's your thoughts going into that one?
Well, they both need a win, don't they? I know Brackley won on the opening day, sort of surprisingly, really, didn't they? They beat Eastleigh. Probably not surprising seeing what Eastleigh have done this week as well and what's happening internally. But yeah, you'd have thought Eastleigh may well have taken the points off Brackley, but they didn't. And Brackley have started okay in the league. They've wanted to come into it for a number of years. They finally got there. They'll be relishing the fact that they go into somewhere like Yeovil because it is a nice ground, Hewish Park. Yeah, it could be a little bit toxic at Hewish Park in terms of the Yeovil side of things, and Brackley could play on that and could take advantage of that. You know, knowing what Mark Cooper's like in terms of an individual and character, he's going to want more out of his players, and he's going to expect a response from the Forest Green Rovers situation and losing there. And I think Yeovil will win 2-0.
Concern for me in this match is, for Yeovil specifically, is they yet to have scored and they're coming up against a Brackley side that are going to be very, very organised, which I think they're going to be the whole of this season. And the question for me is whether Yeovil can actually break them down with the players that they've got, because I do still feel they're lacking that little bit of spark in that midfield. I think Daly's coming. I like the look of that, but they potentially need 1 or 2 other players in there as well for me. I am going to go for Yeovil 1-0 win, but I could very easily see a 0-0 draw. I think Brackley are a side that no one should underestimate this season. You know, I think they're going to be very hard to break down, and I think they will survive Brackley quite comfortably as well. I think they'll be able to get enough points at home specifically, and I think on the road they'll get a fair few. But I think in this one, I think Yeovil, you'd expect them to score in that 3rd game, and I think they will. You know, the likes of Tavon Campbell, Junior Moraes, Jarvis, Daly. One of them surely going to have to score in this match, I think, for me. And yeah, I'm going to go for a 1-0 Yeovil win. We'll move on to the final fixture now that we're going to preview. And of course, that is the fixture of the game week. Probably the fixture of the season so far on, and it's coming in game week 3 between Southend United and York. Firstly, Paul, before we go on to your prediction and everything, looking at Southend start to the season, maximum points for them, pretty pleasing, isn't it?
Oh yeah, massive. You can't ask for more. You know, to go and win games 3-0 and 2-0, and especially, when you look at the first one, Gateshead away, you've got to beat what's in front of you, and Gateshead clearly were all at sea, and Southend are taking advantage of that. Teams will go to Gateshead this season and struggle purely because of distance and the type of stadium it is, and the type of team Gateshead are, and the fact that they will get their act together. So yeah, that's a great result for them. And then obviously to go and to beat Tamworth and 2-0, probably quite comfortably as well at home, that will only allow Southend fans to start believing. There'll be a big crowd there under lights. It'll be a great atmosphere at Roots Hall. York will want to go there and prove that they're the title contenders after not starting particularly well. 2-2 draw with Sutton, just beating Truro, I guess, in the last 10 minutes, just getting them dealt with. Matt, really, really good game on paper. Really good game. One that, be it on Wednesday night, I'm out on Tuesday night watching Woking Wealdstone. So hopefully I'll be able to get and see this Southend York game, because I think it will be a really, really good game. And tough one to call, Luke. Tough one to call. And I've gone with Southend to win 2-1.
I can't see York going there and winning. I think the best thing they can get is a point. And I think that would be a very, very good point as well for York. And I'm not saying that means that I think Southend are going to go on to win the league and York won't. Potentially neither actually will. I think not many people, including myself before ball kicked, saw Southend as real contenders. I think now, although we're only 2 games in, I've opened my eyes more and realised that actually, as a side, they're very well drilled and potentially they have got the ability to be in a title race this season. Roots Hall, it's going to be a very difficult place to go this season. I think it has been in the past to go. I've always seen it's a tough place to go. I don't think Halifax have ever won there since Southend have actually come down into this division or even got a point. The difference between these two sides at this point in the season, I think, is that I think Southend are playing York at a good time, and I think York are playing Southend at a bad time. York have had a lot of new players coming into the side that are all very good individuals. But I think with any team, it takes time for them to gel. And I don't necessarily think they've gelled yet, if that makes sense. The opening game week, drop points to Sutton, probably had a better performance than they did against Truro. Truro struggled to break them down. Truro actually had opportunities to actually take the lead as well. I think people are forgetting it wasn't just one-way traffic. It was at times, but not across the 90 minutes. And, the goal came from some very bad defending from Truro, where they spilt it. And, of course, I think that just gave York that bit of momentum, particularly Truro had to push even further forward to be able to get that second. So I'm not particularly sold on York's start to the season, but I expected them to have a tricky-ish start to the season overall. And I say that I don't think they're the ideal start. They still picked 4 points up. But I don't think the performances have particularly been there yet. And I think York will get better as the season goes on. Like most champions have in previous years. I don't think Barnet had the best of starts last season. Lost on the opening day to Halifax. If I remember rightly, I don't think Stockport, when they went up, had a great start to the season. Bromley didn't, even though they went up through the playoffs. So I think for me, I look at York and I look at Southend, who is the same side from last season, and there's just 3 players that have really come into the starting 11 that already know their jobs. And here's the thing with the way Southend play, every single man has got to be up to it. They can't have players going through the motions through games. And I don't think and that's the thing with Southend, because of that, they're very strategic with the way they recruit. They won't bring anyone in who's inconsistent. They have to be consistent players that fit into the system. And I think that's exactly what they've done in the summer. And I think it's coming to fruition so far this season. Boys, I think, is probably the standout for me so far. Austin as well in the midfield. And, we've probably not even seen the best of Dallas yet, who's going to come into the side as well. And I just feel it's a really tough place to go. You look at how both sides play as well. York will probably like to keep the ball. I don't think, and Southend will press high up the field. You look back to that playoff match last season with Oldham. York kept the ball, Oldham pounced, and it caused York to make a mistake. And particularly when there's a lot of new players coming into the side at York earlier on in the season, that press for Southend is deadly. And I think when York, like I've mentioned, when they've got a lot of new players coming into the side, there's likely going to be teething problems which can lead to mistakes. And for that reason, I think Southend will actually go on to win this game 2-0. Anything to finally say, Paul?
No, just I hope for the National League, it's a good advert for the National League. I think it will be two teams who will play with confidence. There's no two ways about that. They'll want to beat each other. They're going to have to want to beat each other. And I think Southend will win 2-1. And if they keep their momentum up, they're going to be serious contenders for being in that top 2 or 3. 1, 2 or 3 rather.
I want to also point out for this match as well, because I know with York, my opinions on them, when I've got like an opinion that doesn't necessarily say they're going to win, or I've got an issue with something there, often it gets flagged up. I want to make a point that I still think York will actually go on to win the league. But I just think at the moment, start of the season, I think Southend are more settled and adjusted compared to York, who've got a lot of new players coming in. And I think at any point in the season, particularly with the way York like to play, I think plays into Southend's hands. And I think when it's a new team coming together on a Tuesday night as well, a long way to go. I just think for me, I think for me, I think it's a really difficult place to go, and I think Southend will win. We'll finally go through some comments before we do, of course, end the podcast. We've only got a few to go through, but I think a victory here will really start to kick on like last season. We've also had Jensen who said, have they predicted the Boston yet? Yeah, we have predicted Boston v Halifax. We did that earlier. You can, of course, watch this back. Someone's mentioned Carlisle had a reality check yesterday, and I'm so grateful it's happened so early into the season. The National League is a lot harder than I thought. I'm loving it. It's so unpredictable, and the thing is, when teams leave this division, most of them do kind of appreciate that this division, what this division actually is about. The winner will go on an unbeaten run. I can see that, to be fair. And I think it will be Southend. However, I think York will come into form later on in the season. Is that yours? Have you got similar opinions? Of course, you back Southend to win this one.
I hope they don't, because Wealdstone have got to go and play him on the 2nd of September at Roots Hall. So I hope they don't go on a winning run, because we'll be part of that. I mean, like I said earlier, Luke, winning breeds confidence, and winning becomes a habit. And you'll get teams coming to Roots Hall, and they'll be beat before they've even gone out on the pitch, because Southend are in such good form, or the same at the LNER with York, or any team. In fact, teams will be going to these places going, shit, we're playing York today, we're playing Southend, we're playing Forest Green. They're on a really good run of form, and that does, in terms of the psychological impact that may have on the opposing team, being negative rather than positive, it can only help that home team or that team that's on that run. So, listen, they're not going to want to win. So let's hope it's not a sort of 0-0 ball draw and they cancel each other out. I don't think it will be that way, and I think Southend will prevail this time. But both of those teams are going to be up there based on this early season form and the squads they have on paper.
Just needs a goal early, doesn't it? And that'll really kick it on. For me, I think it will lead to a York mistake, and that's how Southend will probably score, to be honest, later on in the game. It's the one that stands out to me as the match of the season so far, albeit it's only the third game week of the season. But no, that more or less wraps up the predictions. Please remember to like and subscribe. It really does go a long way if you do like. I know everyone goes on about it as YouTubers, but it does help us out a lot if you can drop us a like and subscribe as well. Of course, check out our Cards Accepted. There's a link in the description for you to do that. No contracts or monthly fees. You get 50% off your card machine if you use that link too. Paul, thanks for joining me once again. I do really appreciate it. You'll be sick of the sight of me now. You've had Friday night, Saturday night, Saturday as well, commentating, and then Sunday with me as well. So, thanks for joining me. I do appreciate it.
No problem at all, mate. No problem at all. Listen, everyone enjoy their midweek games. I hope you get the results you want. Safe travels. Enjoy it. It's great to have Carlisle fans and Forest Green Rovers fans and Eastleigh fans tuning in as well. So welcome to you guys, and obviously the regular listeners. It's great to have you back for this season, and hopefully I'll claw back a few points on these predictions, Luke, after the first couple of weeks, and make it a bit more even. But it's a tough one to try and do, is predict these scores at the moment. So well done on what you've done, and probably speak to you on Thursday about it when I'm probably still way behind.
Well, as you like to say, even if I have won again, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And those are the words that still haunt me at this time, considering I lost the Predictions League last season. We've still got to think of a forfeit as well for the end of the season. And I think we need to get that sorted very soon, because if one of us is very much in the lead, then it don't really feel. I don't think we'll be able to agree on a forfeit, to be honest. But no, Paul, like I said, thanks for joining me, and thanks to everyone else that's tuning in tonight. I do really appreciate it. Join us again on Thursday evening. If you're a Carlisle United fan or a Scunthorpe fan or any of the new teams, share this podcast in your group chat, share it with your mates to try and get it out to more people of your teams. This is the place for National League content. Like I've already said about 5 times, please remember to like and subscribe. And we will see you Thursday. Bye for now.